Good evening, everybody, and thank you
Good
for
evening,
joining us
everybody,
for
and
tonight's
thank you for joining us for tonight's
public meeting regarding the downtown
public
Chatham
meeting regarding
parking
the
and
downtown
circulation
Chatham
study.
parking and
My name is
circulation
Katie
study.
Donovan. I'm the
My name is
Director of
Katie
Community
Donovan. I'm
Development.
the Director of Community Development.
And with us tonight are members of the Parking Solutions Working Group. I'd like to do an introduction of the members that are with us tonight. Online, we have member Jeff Dykins, also representing the Select Board. We also have Angela Bukar online, who represents the Chatham Chamber and Merchants Association. We have Summer Residents Advisory Committee member Mike Waters, Select Board member Dean Nicastro. Our downtown resident representative is Dee Dee Holt, and our Traffic Safety Committee representative is Joan Craig. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16th, 2021 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension, of the March 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Chatham Parking Solutions Working Group is being held in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. I'd like to turn the meeting over now to David Nolan from the Cape Cod Commission, who will run through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and good evening, everybody. My name is Dave Nolan. I am the Senior Transportation Planner at the Cape Cod Commission, and I've been managing this project for about the last 12 months, beginning with data collection and now meeting here tonight with you all to talk about some potential solutions. You just obviously heard from Katie, the Community Development Director in town, but I also want to introduce some of the other folks from the project team, from the Cape Cod Commission staff. I'm joined here tonight by Colleen Medeiros, our Transportation Program Manager, Joya Smeichel, our Transportation Planner, who's done a lot of work on this project, and in the hallway is Evan Costa, a Transportation Planner as well. I'm sure you probably met him as you walked in. Obviously, we were working closely with the town and the Parking Solutions Working Group as part of this project. So tonight I want to talk about lots of different topics. I want to talk about the project background and walk through a photo inventory that we've done, a very robust data collection effort that started last summer. Then I want to get into some of the nitty-gritty potential parking management solutions for downtown Chatham. I want to talk about potential circulation management solutions for downtown Chatham. I want to talk about kind of all the other solutions that we can try to incorporate in downtown Chatham. And then I want to talk about next steps and take your questions and hear from you about what it is you like that was presented tonight, what you question, other ideas that you don't think made it into the presentation that you think we should be looking at for downtown Chatham. So this project is part of the Cape Cod Commission Transportation Team's 2024 Cape Cod Unified Planning Work Program. This is essentially part of our scope of work. So this funding comes from Mass DOT for us to do this project for the town. The town had reached out to us and wanted to have us do an in-depth look at a parking study with a really robust data collection plan. So that's what we did here. Some of the goals of this plan are to develop a set of potential parking improvements aimed at improving safety and efficiency of moving people and goods throughout downtown Chatham. Develop a set of potential roadway improvements aimed at improving the safety and efficiency of moving people and goods throughout downtown Chatham. Improving signage for all roadway users, and soliciting town staff, committee, and public feedback on all potential improvements as part of this plan. So we looked at some common study elements. The Commission has done several parking studies in the past, including Provincetown and Orleans. I pulled a quote from the Orleans one. The goal of that project was to identify the improvements of parking and circulation that would increase the safety of pedestrians, bikes, vehicles, encourage commerce, and enhance the community character in downtown. Safety is something I'm going to always talk about when a lot of my work is revolved around safety. I really want to improve safety for everybody using our transportation system. So this plan, we did an existing conditions analysis. We did a very in-depth parking assessment where we looked at the downtown lots and a lot of the on-street parking, and then a circulation assessment where we did a lot of traffic counts, as well as the non-motorist amenities such as crossings, curb ramps, and so on. Outreach. We began outreach last November. We actually met with the Parking Solutions Working Group, and we presented a lot of the data that I'm going to present tonight. So for some of you folks, this is going to be a refresher, something you've seen before, but an important thing to kind of hit home some of the facts that we saw out there. We met with the Merchants Association this past winter as well, where we presented our data that was collected as well, and took some feedback about some solutions they wanted us to look into, and some of those solutions will be presented tonight. And then lastly, we wanted to come to the public with everything in mind. So we want to present the data tonight, present these potential solutions, and then we're going to have a 3-week public comment period for folks to kind of respond to what's presented tonight and have a chance to kind of really inform their decision what their comments might be. We're also going to take comments tonight from those in the room and those online. And then again, I'll hit on it one more time, the potential solutions, including infrastructure improvements as well as parking management strategies. Here's the timeline. We began this data collection process last summer. Project overview. I'll hit on this quickly because I did cover some of this. Right now we're in the alternatives review, so this is where I'm going to present on the potential solutions. I want to hear from you. What we'll do next is prepare a draft report, and we're going to come back to the Parking Solutions Working Group in the town with all of the comments we received, the pros and cons of different management solutions, what it is folks supported, what it is folks were maybe opposed to, work with them to kind of create a draft report, and then go final here sometime late this fall, early this winter. So that way the town may have some time to implement some of these strategies heading into summer 2025 if they'd like. So I mentioned before that the commission has done some parking studies, but we did want to look into some other communities. Chatham is a destination town. It's a place where people like to visit, right? A lot of folks are driving to and from to visit the downtown area, visit the beaches. Myself, I do visit Chatham once a week throughout the year. I come every Thursday night and use your wonderful community center to play floor hockey. And then I do go to dinner at the Red Nun every Thursday night after floor hockey. So I love your downtown. I love coming here. And I just want to enhance it year round for everybody. So we looked at the town of Plymouth. One thing we took from Plymouth is they have a shuttle. That's something that we wanted to dive further into. We actually reached out to the town of Plymouth and got some feedback from them on how they went about getting a shuttle and how that's been going. We looked at the town of Provincetown, where you do need to pay to park in their downtown. So we looked at kind of the revenue streams that they have, what they've been able to do with the funding from tickets, parking permits, and so on. And then the last location we looked at was actually Newport, Rhode Island. They had some really good information on restricted parking, so I actually pulled some information I saw on their website here, as well as a sign that you can see. Different lots have different parking restrictions. Different parking, on-road parking has different restrictions as well to kind of create that turnover. If you're parked here for so long, you pay this price versus all day a different price. So these are some of the locations that we really dove into to kind of compare what we're seeing here in Chatham. What can we take from these locations to enhance downtown Chatham? So the project area, it includes Main Street parking in the adjacent lots, including the lighthouse, and as of more recently, the fish pier. I'll get into that in a little bit. The Chatham Bars Ave intersection, the Shore Road at Barcliff Ave intersection as well. We looked at Depot Road behind the Veterans Field there in front of the fire station, and as well as Route 28 at the Main Street, the Rotary in downtown. Again, we looked at the multimodal facilities, curb ramps, sidewalks, crosswalks, and more. All right, so the best rule I ever heard from my first boss was you can't do a project until you've visited the location and kind of understood what it is to be a visitor or someone walking, biking, driving there. So we really got out last summer and really dug into what's out there. And we did a really in-depth photo inventory. These are some images of what we saw. Of note, there was a lot of overcapacity lots. Folks finding their own places to park, vehicles being ticketed for not parking in spaces, a trailer utilizing 3 spaces in one of the lots, some faded lines at the community center as well, making it a little tricky to kind of understand where you can park. So these are just some of the things we saw. On-street parking in Depot Road, that was very full when we were out taking our inventory. The community center was overflown one day. There was a craft fair going on there. A very well-attended craft fair, but a very full parking lot with that. I thought the Squire lot was kind of interesting with its one-way flow and kind of that parallel parking around the outskirts of it. There were some limited parking areas on Main Street. A nice photo of the Veterans Field lot with no vehicles in it at that time. And then a photo of some of the public parking signs or maps that you see throughout downtown. I thought those can be very helpful for those visiting the area for the first time. Signage. There's one key takeaway for this slide is that every sign looks different. Uniformity is important, especially for folks that may be new to the area. Not every sign needs to look the exact same, but having those warning signs all looking similar, the wayfinding, entrance to parking lot signs, if we can make those more uniform, it makes things a little bit easier for folks when they're coming to Chatham. Other accommodations, including multimodal, like bike parking, crosswalks, handicap parking, and curb ramps. There's a lot of good infrastructure out here already. There's a lot that can be improved as well. So some bike racks at the town hall lot. We have the triangle crossing at the intersection of Chatham Bars Ave, some ADA compliant curb ramps at the Kate Gould parking lot. A very long crosswalk near the lighthouse, adjacent to a parking space, some handicap parking, and I think the walkway from the schools to the community center is very, effective. I like parking up by your schools and then walking down if I can, so I'm a big time user of this amenity. We did lots of traffic counts. We did, on the map here, we actually have some equipment out right now. If you drove down through the Rotary area this past week, you've probably seen our counters out there collecting data currently, but we've counted numerous intersections and roadways in this area, so that way we can compile all this information into the report. I'm not going to bog you down with too much of the data tonight, but all that is going to be compiled, so that way the solutions, the parking group and the town has all that information as well, that they can refer back to. One thing that we did last summer that was unique was a 12-hour manual count on Main Street. We counted in front of the church just to the west of Cross Street. And during that 12-hour count, I could put the stats up here. We had over 6,000 pedestrians going in each direction during that 12-hour period, over 150 children in strollers in each direction, upwards of 150 bikes, and 10 or more others, wheelchairs, scooters, rollerbladers, if there were any of those. But we wanted to see what was happening, so that's why we went out for 12 hours. But we actually had a long-term counter placed in downtown Chatham for the duration of the summer last year. We put it up on June 30th and picked it up on August 27th. This counter, I'm going to jump ahead one slide. It's this photo on the left here on a utility pole. So this only counted one side of the roadway, only one half of the roadway. And we counted over 341,000 people walking by this counter last summer in Chatham. Our peak day was July 2nd. Over 11,000 people passed this counter that day. And even the low day was still over 2,500 people. I think that was a Wednesday, July 12th. I'd have to double check what the weather was that day. But even still, 2,500 people still walking on the least populous day was impressive to me. So this is our counter, as I mentioned, and then we wanted to really dive into, so we got all the traffic counts, we wanted to know who was walking and biking in the area. Now it's time to figure out how the parking is being utilized. So our GIS team at the commission made us an awesome web tool for us to go out and do these counts with, and we were able to collect all of our data as such. I'll breeze through these slides quickly, but we collected, I kind of put the parking lots into different categories. This is more for me, so if you're not the biggest fan of the names I gave them, my apologies. But these are the ball area lots for me, including the community center, Veterans Field, the parking on Depot Road, Railroad Museum there, and then the sides of the school, the front and the side. Then we had the downtown core lots, so the big lot behind the Orpheum, the Town Hall lot, the Chatham Squire lot, Kate Gould Park, and the Oyster Pond Beach lot. Then we had some of the other or on-street parking lots, right? We had the Eldridge lot, as well as the Chatham Lighthouse, and Main Street and Chatham Bars Ave parking. Last summer, when we collected this data, we did not collect data at the fish pier. That was hand up sort of on us to kind of our miss. Since then, we have collected that data. I was out on July 1st, and I'm going to walk through all that data as well. And we're going to show you kind of what happened at the fish pier. So these first couple slides I'm going to show you are not going to include the fish pier, but beyond that, it will show the fish pier. So on Friday, July 28th of 2023 was the first day we collected data in downtown Chatham. Of note, that day there was an anglers game as well as a concert at Kate Gould Park. So what we did is we collected the number of vehicles in each parking lot every hour on the hour. What this kind of shows is how full each lot was during the count. Light green is under 25% full, and it works its way up to that reddish pink color, which is over 100% capacity. So this is where we saw vehicles parking on shoulders, in grassy areas, double parking in some cases, those overcapacitated areas. So of note here, I noticed that the town hall and Kate Gould Park, as well as the community center and Veterans Field, were over capacity kind of once you got towards that game time for the Anglers game. So where there's a demand, that's where people are wanting to park. Then we came back, I mentioned the craft fair earlier, on a Saturday in August, where there was the craft fair at the community center, and we noticed a lot of overflow parking at the community center early in the morning, as well as Kate Gould Park, Town Hall, and the Orpheum lot throughout the day. But one thing of note, there is a lot of light green here still, so that tells me that there still is places for people to park in downtown Chatham. Third day we came out was Monday, August the 7th. There was a Mondays on Main event, which was a concert at the park. Again, very full in some of those core lots, over capacitated. But again, those schools are light green all day long, very underutilized, and a great place for someone to park if they're coming to downtown Chatham. Last day, we did a Tuesday with no events, and it was still very, very busy in downtown Chatham. Overcapacity, those core lots yet again, but again, a lot of underutilized places in town. Veterans Field, there was no game that day, so there was a lot of light green there, folks leaving that parking lot wide open and available. This summarizes the 4 days of data collection. So if you take our 4 days, some with events, some without, weekend days, weekdays, this was kind of the average parking utilization in downtown Chatham. So if you picked a random summer day, here's kind of what you could expect to be available for you when you come to park in downtown Chatham. Again, the Orpheum lot, the Town Hall lot, and Kate Gould Park were at or over capacity. The schools and some of those outer lots were well below capacity. I mentioned capacity because there's sort of a rule in transportation planning and engineering that the 85% rule, which is a parking industry standard. Basically, when a parking lot or an area is routinely over 85% full, that's when you need to think of some serious aggressive parking management strategies, such as potentially increasing the parking supply in your area. What I have here is each hour now called out how much occupied parking there was in downtown Chatham throughout every lot. So while those core lots were at over capacity, at over 100%, if you look at the entire parking supply, we never once hit the 85% capacity, which kind of tells me that there is enough parking in downtown Chatham. So I mentioned the fish pier was done a little separately because we didn't count it that first summer, but we heard feedback from the Parking Solutions group, the town as well, that they really wanted us to collect data at the fish pier. So we were able to scramble and get out this summer. Katie joined me for a little bit too while I was down there and gave me the lay of the land. I did the same thing here. I took an inventory of the photos, kind of what I saw. I think there's an awesome new pedestrian pathway with signage heading down towards the fish pier itself. There's some good parking restriction signage, the off-site parking signage as well. I noticed some vehicles double parking in spaces. There's like 2 parallel parking spaces sort of at the end, adjacent to a more normal parking space, which created some conflict throughout the day, was something I noticed. As the day went on, congestion became more and more. Cars idling, trying to find parking spaces, waiting for folks to leave. And then one thing, when I was talking to the Wharfingers, they set up these barriers around 9 in the morning to kind of direct all vehicles to the Barcliff Ave intersection to enter the fish pier that way. So I thought that was something of note. Lots of cyclists and families walking to and from the fish pier. That was something I had never seen before. I haven't spent much time at the fish pier. Parking restriction signage on Shore Road with on-street parking kind of in the background there, so I was keeping an eye on that. The on-road parking on Shore Road adjacent to the lot. A full parking lot as well, partly my fault for taking a spot for the majority of the day. A delivery vehicle, UPS was idling, delivering packages to one of the nearby residents. I thought that was an interesting place for the UPS truck to park for a 5-minute period, kind of creating some conflict there. And then the enhanced crossings down by the fish pier itself, I thought were a very nice touch. So here's my data kind of summarized here. What we did a little differently at the fish pier is we looked at turnover rates. The fish pier is, from what I understood from the town, is a lot that folks visit for a shorter period of time. You're stopping there to kind of watch the boats come in, get a few photos of the seals, bring the kids, grab lunch, and kind of move on. So what I wanted to do is I counted to see how full the lot was each hour on the hour. But I also counted license plates every 30 minutes to kind of see how long a vehicle was parked in their spot. So the first graphic on the left is how full the lot was throughout the day. It never got to 100% capacity, partly because some vehicles double parked and the spaces are a little tight. You almost couldn't fit 100% capacity, but it was definitely encroaching on that 85% rule that we talked about. The vehicle turnover, I think there was 270 unique vehicles that visited the fish pier that day. 159 of them were there for less than half an hour. So that's a really good turnover rate. 63 of them were there for a half an hour to an hour. I'll jump to the end here. 7 of the vehicles were there for 8+ hours. So there were 7 vehicles there when I arrived at 8 in the morning, and those 7 vehicles were still there at 4 p.m. when I left. You're allowed to do that as it stands in this lot. Whether or not that's something that should or should not be allowed is up for discussion. But just something I noted is that a lot of folks are not here for very long. There are some restricted parking signs in the lot. I think there was 3 or 4 spaces that say 1 hour parking only. And when I looked at those spaces, I think only 1 vehicle throughout the day was there for over an hour, which is pretty good. Turnover rate was pretty good in the handicap spaces as well. I noted that. And it was just an eye-opening experience being there for the day and kind of watching congestion coming in and out. I also counted the vehicles that were parked on Shore Road. I was told this was light for Shore Road, so I'll keep that in mind as we kind of move forward in this project. But I saw a maximum of 14 vehicles were parked along the shoulders on Shore Road going to the fish pier that day. That's it for data collection. These are kind of some of the takeaways that we noted based on all of our data collection efforts. The first one being there is sufficient parking supply in downtown Chatham. However, the core lots are frequently at or above capacity, but other lots are underutilized. Signage is different across every lot and accessing all of the parking areas. And there was a lack of ADA compliance in several crosswalk locations, lacking the tactile warning plates. Even the green color is a little bit ADA lack of compliance. So those are things that we noted as part of this study. That's it for the existing conditions review. And where I would like to pause briefly for a couple clarifying questions, if anyone has any, on data collection before we move into solutions. And Katie, I'd ask you to monitor what's happening online, of course. Yes.
Have you accounted for the parking on Shore Road down by Claflin Landing? There's about 20 cars on both sides of the road. Do you intend to leave that there?
Could you repeat that?
Yes, down Shore Road, on the south side, there's Claflin Landing, which goes out to the beach. There's a motel there, and there's about 15 cars on each side of the street where there's parking. There's also a little additional parking north of Barcliff, but it's only 4 cars.
Yep.
They're kind of dangerous spots, or I think at least problematic. Do you have any plans for those?
We definitely counted the vehicles in that 4-car spot north of Barcliff. And we do have some recommendations potential solutions for that area. We did not look at that other location that you mentioned further south by the hotel over there. We did not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, and this is great, by the way, that the data collection was in 2023, and most of it was in August. I think if we had done it in July, it would have been more pronounced. And if it had been done this year, probably, I mean, I've been here I'm in my 31st year, and I have never seen as many people in this town as we have this summer. It is overwhelming to the point of being undesirable.
Okay.
So just for the record, thank you.
I thought the thing said from July 1st.
Excuse me, could you use the microphone when asking questions?
I heard July 1st. I counted the fish pier this year on July 1st. And then last summer, when we did all of, minus the fish pier lots, we started, the first data collection day was late July. The next 3 were in August. But the remote counter that we had set up was June through August. So just summarizing again when we were out there.
Could I just? Sorry. Following up on a previous speaker with regards to the activities this summer, the day after the 4th, which I believe was a Friday, the 5th, I work in West Chatham, and people were coming into our shop saying, don't go downtown, it is backed up to Pate's and to Mac's Seafood. So it's absolutely been one of the, if not the busiest summer that many of us have ever seen. So just for the record, thank you.
We do have a question online. Jeff Dykens?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Dave and the commission for an excellent study. We have seen some of this data before, and I just think it's the way to go about our business is to really analyze and quantify, and then analyze the data. And I'm heartened to hear that we have enough parking, and I would agree. It's just not in the right places all the time. I'm also, as action items, the signage, I think, needs to be more consistent and conform with, whatever the current signage of the day that's most effective for directing people. And the attention to ADA is appreciated as well. We do have a group that's been on this for a while, but we have some work to do there. So anyway, so far, I just thrilled with the presentation that the commission is doing, that you're doing too, Dave. Thank you very much. It has been very, very busy here. Thanks. I'm looking forward to solutions. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take one more and then we'll move on.
Barry Desolitz, North Chatham. I'm just curious if you're going to get to why some of these lots are underutilized, specifically Eldridge. That really caught my eye at why that is so underutilized, and if you have recommendations for that.
Yeah, I think part of that one was cost associated with it, and it starts to move out of that downtown core. I think at that point, a lot of folks have found where they want to park, or may have even given up where they want to park at that point. Just some takeaways I've noticed so far.
So just to follow up, you think part of the issue with Eldridge is that it's a paid lot?
Not necessarily, but I think that there needs to be signage. I think better signage, letting folks know that there is this option a little further down the line too. I think when I first ever visited here, I wasn't sure that there was more parking further down. It kind of starts to separate as you get down there, starts to become a little bit more residential. So I think not knowing exactly where it is can be part of the issue as well.
Thank you.
David, we do have one more
Sure.
online question if we could. Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure this is the right time or if after solutions are presented, but I would have to agree. I think downtown has become like the Wild West. And it's like being in a video game when you're trying to get through town. One of the things that concerns me is that, with all the food trucks at the height of the season that have been allowed, they take up 4 spaces, and it's kind of random. They may or may not show up, which reduces the parking. And the new electric vehicle policy, where the town is going to be putting in EV stations in all of our municipal properties, all the beaches, the parks, and all municipal property. So we're going to lose space there. I think that moving forward, what we have to do is, I think, modify people's behavior. That is becoming a real concern. I think we've skirted the issue of parking meters, but I think we have to do that. I know that people come into town and they park and they stay all day in that spot. And then they go and they eat and they shop and they go to the beach. And that's a space loss for the entire day. The pedestrians, I don't know how you can modify their behavior, but I have never seen so many people walking out from in between cars, not on a crosswalk, leading with their baby carriage, and they're on their cell phones. It's really dangerous. I am shocked that nobody's been hit. And I think there has to be something where you will be fined if you don't use a crosswalk. It's really dangerous. And the other thing that I think, and I know a lot of towns do it, but on that section from the Rotary down Main Street, I don't think there should be any bicycles or skateboards. I've seen situations with kids racing down the street 2 and 3 abreast, and cyclists 2 and 3 abreast, and it's really tough. It's narrow. You've got 2 lines of traffic, and if we can find a space to put in a lot more parking for bikes and say pedestrians only on that portion of the street. I think that there's going to be an accident if we don't look at the entire picture of the amount of parking that we have in town. It's finite, and it continues to be reduced. So I would urge you to consider those ideas so that we don't have people coming in early in the day and staying all day. There's no point. Somebody posted a video. They were trying to drive down Main Street, and it took them 15 minutes to get to the Rotary. And that's crazy, coming down from Shore Road. For full-time residents who just need to do business, it's impossible. There's no point going downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think we'll hopefully hit on some of those concerns in the solution section here. I would like to move on and do the solutions, and then we'll have the time for discussion, questions, and even an activity as well after. So lots more to talk about still. Get the slideshow back here. All right, so the first couple things I want to talk about is the potential parking management solutions. And this is kind of, the data has helped us support coming up with some of these potential ideas. But the goal really tonight, and then over this 3-week public comment period, is to hear from the town, the residents, those using the parking areas, visitors, and business owners, employees as well. What about these management solutions do you support? What do you not love? What would you add that we don't have? What would you tell us to investigate further? What do you think needs to happen? So on. That's really what I want to hear. So uniform parking signage is something we'll talk about. Parking time restrictions, paid parking, employee parking lots or employee parking spaces, electric vehicle charging, and on-street parking. So one of the first things I mentioned was the uniform signage or wayfinding signage in downtown. Obviously, I showed that slide earlier that had lots of different signage options already in downtown. So utilizing the same signage at the entrance to each lot. I'm not necessarily saying it needs to be this bright blue one, but just something that's unique for Chatham, but each lot is the same. So that way you know where you're going. Kind of creates a uniformity around downtown Chatham. Folks know it's predictable. If I'm trying to find parking, I'm looking for this sign in this area. Parking time restrictions. Trying to encourage that turnover. We talked about turnover a lot at the Fish Pier. Considering making Main Street a 2-hour time restriction, that's just an option. That's not anything set in stone here, but things that we've seen in other localities in the past. So that way folks can come to downtown Chatham and do their local business, visit the post office, go to the library, and then kind of get out of there quicker. You don't have somebody parking there for the duration of the day, working their shift, or parking on the road and walking down to the lighthouse and going to the beach for hours on end. Trying to create that turnover, getting folks to and from the businesses, and if you need to park longer, try to find yourself a space in one of the lots. Defined parking spaces on Main Street. Right now there's parking bays, areas along Main Street, there's potential to make individual parking spaces to kind of better define, so that way the first vehicle that gets there in the day isn't setting the tone for maybe poor parking in that area for the day. Kind of telling folks where they need to park. Maybe it becomes a little bit easier for ticketing purposes. Well, if you're not parked in the space correctly, if you're double parking, it's a little bit easier to manage that. And then pockets of parking with restrictions. You don't need to make Main Street 2-hour parking for the entire duration. Maybe there's certain segments closer to Town Hall or some of those businesses. Those could be restricted, or you could even do parking in lots. This is from the Newport example I showed earlier. Restricted signage into a lot. You could have 3-hour parking, and beyond that, it could even be you have to pay after a certain amount of time in a lot, which moves me into the paid parking. Considering paid parking lots in the downtown core, kind of those areas where the most people, the highest utilization are, with free parking in those outer lots to encourage folks to park out of downtown, keeping more vehicles away from downtown and folks kind of walking in. Consider making paid parking, making it paid parking after 2 hours. Maybe the first 2 hours are free. Just different options. Metered on-street parking, again, considering maybe the first half an hour is free, so that way folks can do their local business, visit the post office, and they're not charged for doing that business. I have a quote here from Provincetown. All of Provincetown parking revenues from the lots, meters, kiosks, and sale of vehicle permits are deposited into the parking fund. The parking funds cover department operations and then applied to reduce the property tax levy in town. This is a photo of a paid parking kiosk in on the harbor in Hyannis. Not necessarily what a kiosk needs to look like in downtown Chatham. Downtown Chatham and downtown Hyannis are different, but an example of one that brings in a revenue stream for our communities. Employee parking lots or employee parking spaces. I know for a fact the employee parking sign, if we went that route, wouldn't say Cape Cod Healthcare on it. So again, just an example of something that we already see in our region. But considering a seasonal employee lot potentially, maybe up by the elementary schools, having employees kind of park on the outskirts and then getting them to the businesses. I remember when I worked retail back in college, I could not park in the prime locations to the business. I had to park in the back to make sure our customers had the prime parking to kind of create that commerce. Encourage vendor parking at the elementary schools as well. This was something I noticed at that craft fair. I think a lot of the vendors were parked in the community center lot as well, taking spaces away from folks that wanted to come spend their money at their tables. So maybe there's a way to kind of assist with that and encourage these vendors, park here for setup and then move your vehicle to the school and walk on down to make sure vehicles aren't feeling denied access to the craft fair or other events that are going on downtown. Electric vehicle charging. I just kind of want to hear some feedback on what folks think about EV charging. We know it's going to be implemented at the new Eldridge lot. Potential EV charging at the elementary school and the community centers. I know the town is looking into a whole EV charging law here, and consider installing EV parking in other downtown lots. Kind of making sure that we have that supply as more and more EVs do join the road network, making sure that there's a place for them to park as well. This is a graphic that we kind of conceptualized for Depot Road. This shows what you're used to now on Main Street, the parking kind of bays, to kind of formalize the parking on Depot Road. I think with this here, we got 19 or 20 parking spaces formally on Depot Road. We have the cutouts where existing fire hydrants or where the crosswalk are now, or where the curvature of the roadway wouldn't allow for parking as well. So this kind of follows what we saw currently happening on Depot Road where vehicles are parking. So just something we wanted some feedback on as well. Obviously, you could consider doing individual parking spaces, like I mentioned for Main Street, not just the bays of parking, but just showing this concept here tonight. I want to talk about some of the circulation management solutions as well. Potential downtown shuttle, overflow parking signage, crosswalk improvements, loading zones and drop-off zones, bicycle improvements, as well as the fish pier and then the rotary. So a downtown shuttle pilot, reviving a downtown Chatham shuttle to provide visitors with more comfort parking in the outer lots. The way to do this is we need to incentivize the use of a shuttle, so potentially making it free, or having those that use the shuttle get vouchers or validation when visiting a business and spending money. Then maybe the shuttle ride can become free. Creating pickup and drop-off locations and incorporating those into the parking maps that are downtown as well. You could do a private or a public partnership. Obviously, cost is going to be and I've heard this already tonight, that the Solutions Group has talked about a shuttle before, and really how can this be done to then make sure folks are actually using it. So I really want to hear feedback. Would folks support a shuttle in downtown Chatham or not? And then obviously we could consider an electric shuttle as well. Overflow parking signage. We mocked up some graphics in our office. This is something that you could have. This is just all draft and conceptual. Something that could be in your lots. You kind of can't find something, but maybe there's a kiosk as you're pulling back out. You can grab something like this. Maybe it's blown up larger, like a sign, a waffle board sign that comes out when it's the peak season, and kind of lets you know how far away you are from other areas to park and how long that walk might be. So very similar to what you have for signage already, but maybe just a little bit more accessible to someone trying to park. The photo on the top right is overflow signage that's currently in North Falmouth, actually, at one of the rail trail parking lots. It's a smaller lot with a lot of heavy use, especially on the weekends. So they've installed a sign now that kind of tells you 2 locations that are not too far by. It gives you an address, so you can hopefully more easily find a place to park and then get on the rail trail. So just an example of another town here on Cape Cod using some signage like that. Then at the bottom is just an example of some signage that can come out once parking has become overflown in a lot, right? These don't need to be here all day, but kind of parking you, or directing you out of a lot into another one if a lot is full or nearing capacity. Crosswalk improvements at the Chatham Bars Ave intersection on Main Street. This we kind of took the same 3-leg approach, but shortened the crossing distances, and actually created bulb outs to really shorten the distance, so vehicles have a better chance of seeing pedestrians as they're crossing the roadways. You lose parking on the sides, but you gain parking back in the middle where the triangle would meet. So it kind of is a net even of the parking stock here. But again, this creates better places for pedestrians on the corners as they're trying to cross the roadway. And then using MUTCD compliant paint and ADA compliant curb ramps as well. Crosswalk improvements at the Chatham Lighthouse. This is where we would lose 1 parking space based on this concept here. Right now the crosswalk is very long and was really tucked in against a parking space. I crossed it a few times and you kind of just pop up behind a vehicle and you're in the roadway. So we put in a little green area too. We can obviously enhance it and make it look a little bit more beautiful, making it a shorter crossing distance, creating that curb ramp and bulb out, and just making it an overall safer crossing to get to and from the lookout over there by the lighthouse. Delivery vehicle loading in drop-off zones and drop-off hours. This is something that we heard from the Solutions Group when we first met, as well as from the Merchants Association. So creating designated delivery and drop-off zones, parking spaces, and hours. Maybe there's a way to kind of limit the time of day these delivery vehicles of a certain size potentially are coming to downtown. I took this text on the next bullet here straight from the town of Provincetown. From April 1st through October 31st, all deliveries on Commercial Street between Pearl and Central Streets will only be allowed until 12 p.m. And then there's signage as well on Commercial Street for those delivery drivers to know that they are not allowed to be idling there and dropping off after noon at these locations. So maybe something that the businesses may want to consider, as well as the town, to kind of limit the time and the number of delivery vehicles kind of encroaching on the roadways on Main Street. Another drop-off zone idea was in front of the Orpheum. We've heard feedback that lots of folks want to just quickly get in and around their vehicles at the Orpheum. So we put together a handful of concepts here. The top left being the existing infrastructure that you see today. The top right is a 2-space parking, or a loading zone rather, drop-off zone, kind of at the end of the parking bay, so not right in front of the Orpheum lot, but adjacent to. The bottom right shows 1 vehicle loading zone at the end of the parking bay as well. Bottom left shows a 2-space right in front of the Orpheum, kind of showing that too. We wanted to just kind of get some ideas. Could be a little tricky with a little bit more parking just beyond. And then you'll notice too, just because we had to, we threw in the MUTCD compliant crosswalk in place of the existing one on all these graphics as well. Bicycle improvements, uniform bicycle racks in every downtown lot. We took an inventory of the existing bike parking in town, similar to the signage, maybe less to quite the harm. A lot of the bike racks are different. I am not the biggest bike rider. I'm more of a casual, so I like uniformity. So I want to hear feedback on that. Then we also thought about, and I know that there's been some concerns and conversation about whether or not bikes should be allowed to ride on Main Street in Chatham. I think Main Street, Chatham, that's kind of up for debate, right? Maybe you should be biking to Main Street, getting off and walking. But if we're going to continue to allow bikes to ride along the roadway, maybe introducing share markings, like the photo you see here on the bottom left. The town is accustomed to these. I know there's some over by the bridge on Bridge Street, so it wouldn't be too new to the community. I also like this photo too, just to kind of show the individual parking spaces. This is in downtown Dennis on Route 28 actually, but just an example of what that parking could look like, even for a pilot period. The fish pier, obviously we wanted to have some recommendations there as well. The first one is this installing crosswalks at the intersection of Shore Road and Barcliff Ave. That graphic is kind of conceptualized in the bottom right here. I saw numerous families, I think I mentioned this in my photo inventory, walking and biking to and from the fish pier. And there was a lot of, vehicles, conflict is the word I'm looking for. A lot of conflict between those crossing and the vehicles there, not knowing who to let go, when you can. A lot of landscaping vehicles down there as well. So providing adequate crossings across Barcliff to that parking area on the northern side that we had talked about, getting you down across to the shortest leg and getting you as close to the pedestrian pathway down to the fish pier was what we looked at there. We would need further analysis on this, but maybe we could consider making Shore Road at Barcliff Ave an all-way stop. We would need to do some more serious data collection of traffic counts in that area before we were comfortable approaching that any further. Creating more time-restricted parking spaces in the fish pier lot. I mentioned earlier there's like 3 or 4 spaces that are only an hour or a maximum of an hour, and all but one vehicle throughout the day complied, so maybe there's a way to encourage more turnover in this lot as well. Implementing paid parking would be an option here as well, especially if you're staying over a certain period of time. Maybe once you've been there for 2 hours, it becomes a paid lot. Again, creating that turnover is key. On the top right is a photo of those barriers that got put up. One idea that we had would be temporary parking when these barriers are in place. They looked like there was enough space to get at least another 3 vehicles in there, potentially even more. But if we are closing this during the peak season, maybe we can close it entirely and just add a couple more parking spaces in place of this driveway here as well. And this is again where I'd want to do more data collection to see what's actually happening at the Shore Road Barcliff Ave intersection before we take away a driveway. But no one's allowed to use this during the peak periods anyway, so maybe there's a chance to close that. And then electrical vehicle charging stations as well. So another concept we have here would be downtown rotary improvements. And this is coming straight from the Mass Department of Transportation as part of a vulnerable roadway users study they're working on. And these are preliminary design plans that we wanted to kind of share tonight for the first time with the public. Basically, the goal of this is to improve safety for non-motorists at the rotary in downtown Chatham. So this is part of a new program that Mass DOT is implementing. Basically, they're finding projects all across the state, several in our region, in fact, along transit systems to improve pedestrian and transit rider safety before and after getting onto the system. So one thing we wanted to look at is how many folks are actually accessing transit in downtown Chatham. So we worked with the RTA to get some serious ridership numbers and our GIS team, and we uncovered that in 2022 alone, over 2,100 folks used RTA buses to get to downtown Chatham. That's just folks that were getting off buses in downtown Chatham. This doesn't even take into consideration those that got back on buses. So this concept right now is in preliminary design. There is no construction funding for this at this point. And really what this concept does is restripes the crossings, makes them a lot shorter, puts some median islands in the middle of the crosswalks to kind of give pedestrians refuge so they're not walking along the longer diagonal crossings that are there today. And it's tightening the rotary up with striping. So I mentioned earlier traffic counts. This was my team and I out last week putting down roadway counters to kind of see the number of heavy vehicles on all 5 approaches to the rotary. This was requested from the state, from us, to kind of look at what's happening out there, what's the truck traffic look like, to make sure that when they do move forward with these preliminary designs and they really dive into the nitty gritty, they're designing it for the vehicles that are out there to make sure that it is, going to work. So I'm going to talk about some other potential solutions. I'd recommend updating all of the Main Street green crosswalks to MUTCD standards. More lighting in parking lots. I mentioned earlier, I'm a frequent user of the Veterans Field lot, especially in the off-season. There's very little to no lighting in that lot, so that was something that stuck out to me. Restriping the Chatham Community Center parking lot. Right now the lines are very faded. Maybe there's a way to kind of stay on top of that in all the lots, really, to make sure that folks are parking correctly and we're maximizing the space. Updating the You're Here maps within downtown to add locations. Just updating those throughout time. There's the crosswalk at Cross Street. It's a very long crosswalk with a very wide, sweeping right curve. Maybe there's a chance to kind of bulb out that historic rock, that fountain right there, and kind of tightening that crossing. There's potential to be able to add parking spaces if you tighten that up as well along Main Street. Formalizing the desire path through the Veterans Field Playground, connecting to the community center and then the stairway up to Depot Road. Right now, it's just a dirt path. Maybe there's a chance to pave that or with some sort of a path, make it a path, more of a formalized sidewalk to get people to and from that area. And then we talked about maybe the potential of creating a downtown business district to kind of oversee parking needs and funding, especially if we were to go to the paid route and try that, making sure there's someone to kind of oversee what's happening in the area. That's what I have for potential solutions. I want to wrap up with next steps here. I want to hear feedback from everybody here and those online tonight. I also am going to leave the public comment period open until August 18th. There was a lot of information thrown at you tonight. There might be folks that weren't able to attend tonight. I want them to be able to have time to watch the recording, talk with those that were here, and kind of make informed comments about what they heard. We're going to put together a draft report and presentation and come back to the Parking Solutions Working Group sometime this fall, summarizing all of the comments we hear as part of this process. And then the goal would be having a final report sometime late fall, early winter. Here is our timeline up here again. This has my email for those. This is the best way to get comments to us. It's david.nolan@capecodcommission.org. Again, that's open till August 18th, 2024. That doesn't mean if you email me on the 19th, your comment doesn't matter. I will still include it, of course. That's my presentation. Now I want to hear from you. I want to know what you liked, what you didn't like. What did we miss? Other ideas that you might have. What are you in support of? What are you not? So Katie, again, I would let you, if you could, just monitor the online chat would be ideal. And I know that I have Colleen and Joya taking notes, and it's all being recorded, so we can come back to this. Yes.
Hi, David, I'd like to thank you and your staff for the comprehensive report that you put together. It's extremely impressive. I have a question. I guess this is more towards the town than to you. I'm just wondering, when was the last time an engineering review of the parking lots were done, the Orpheum lot, the Squire lot, to maximize the space that's there, the area, to give the maximum number of available parking spaces consideration? I'm just wondering when was the last time that was done. Thank you.
So I can certainly say that that predated me, but we can look into that and try to find that information to have them incorporate that into the final report.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the fish pier. Did you look at the lower lot as well, or did you just look at the upper lot?
I just looked at the upper lot and the on-road parking adjacent to the upper parking lot.
Okay, so since this is an opinion time for us, all the times I go, the area that's put aside for the permitted fishing people seems to be very underutilized. And I'm wondering if, maybe we can take a little bit of that. I know the fishermen right now are ready to shoot me, but to me, it seems very underutilized compared to what's available up top.
Okay. Yeah, and that's something we can reach back out to the wharfinges. When I were there, they were a wealth of knowledge, telling me everything that was going on there. And like I mentioned, there was 7 vehicles there all day long. I'm assuming some of them were probably fishermen parking in some of those prime spots up top. So maybe getting those vehicles lower might be the way to do it. But I appreciate the comment and something I can reach back out on.
John Holgren, seasonal resident, and very interested. I would make a couple of quick comments as far as the uniform signage for parking. Having an additional blue signs like this is nice, but I think the signs you presented, they all tend to be rather unique conditions for that specific location. So you still need to have some of those quirky signs that apply to, for instance, Kate Gould Park, because the band concert has a song which is grammatically incorrect as far as I'm concerned, but anyway. The other thing that came up, actually, it came up today on a Facebook thing, and I responded there. There was previous discussion about the idea of having defined parking spaces on Main Street. And basically the conclusion at that time was that that would actually reduce capacity. Because, let's say, I may be incorrect, but you can put 4 Mini Coopers in the place of 3 SUVs. So having that free form allows flexibility and allows the vehicles to sort of fit where they can. And if you had defined spaces, you would be wasting space for some of those smaller vehicles. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Dean?
Thanks. I have 4 things I wanted to touch on. The first one is, I don't know, this is just an historic comment. You talked about the sidewalks not being, the crosswalks not being ADA compliant, and I assume that the ADA compliance is with the white markings and the cross stripes versus what we have downtown with the blue and the green, which I think personally gives the downtown a bit of a charm feeling rather than this sort of cityfied look. I mean, one of my criticisms, and I supported the roundabouts in West Chatham, but one of my criticisms is all the excess markings on the street that gives it a cityfied look, which I know is required by the Commonwealth. That's just an observation. Second, with respect to the charging stations, I assume that you're suggesting that they would be a benefit because they would attract electric vehicles and help eliminate, and be a benefit environmentally. Is that your sense?
That's part of it, but just knowing more and more electric vehicles are joining the road network, having that infrastructure available.
Okay, well, that's a broader philosophical, I guess, policy discussion. But the more you put in, the more you reduce the number of parking spaces. I'm not advocating against them. I'm just saying that's what happens. And if you take the Eldridge lot where we're going to have 4, with and the way that will work is there 8 vehicles can be, as I understand, 8 vehicles can be accommodated at a time. Because we have a valet service there, they can manage the usage so that somebody doesn't stick a car there and then go to the beach, spend the day. And in the other lots, we won't have that. I wanted to ask you on the Plymouth shuttle, do you know how that was funded? And that's a kind of a neat thing. Do we know?
I had to dive back into some notes, but I think one of the things that they did was work with the Chamber of Commerce and some of the local businesses. You saw some of the advertisements on it. I think that helped pay for it to some degree. But I'd have to dive a little deeper. I can get an answer for you when we come back again.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. I liked it. And I want to the 4th topic is I suspect one of the more controversial, and that is paid parking. I've historically supported paid parking. The last time when this group met and we had a public forum, I changed my position because the merchants in particular came forward, and others, arguing against it. And I was persuaded, but I really do think it's something that the merchants and everyone in town need to take another look at. Because, first of all, we have one paid parking lot, which is the Eldridge lot that Barry talked about. And it's really unfair to, and I support that. I was on the Eldridge committee. We recommended that that be paid parking. It's unfair to the merchants at that end of town to have one paid parking lot and the other downtown lots are not paid parking. I know and I understand that the concern of the merchants is that if you introduce paid parking across the downtown lots, that's all I'm talking about, the town hall lot, maybe the Kate Gould lot, the lot behind the Orpheum, you're going to discourage people from coming. I've never really bought that argument because you look at other communities that are destination communities, they're making a ton of money. Mm-hmm. If we had paid parking this summer, we would be making a fortune. And to the potential detriment of commerce, if we don't do something to improve parking and pedestrian traffic downtown, what's going to happen is, especially after a summer like this, people are going to say, well, why do we want to go to Chatham? It's just a mess down there. You can't get a parking space. You can't walk. I mean, I had an appointment on Friday I live downtown. So I had an appointment at the other end of Main Street, headed toward the Eldridge Garage area. It was difficult walking on the sidewalks on Friday after the 4th of July. So I think these are considerations, and I'm certainly going to listen, but I guess I'm appealing to the Merchants Association and the Chamber of Commerce to take a harder look at parking, at paid parking, as a potential solution in many ways. But thank you for letting me speak. Yeah. I really appreciated the presentation. I think you fellows did a great job. You all did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the comments as well.
We have Dee Dee, and then we'll go to a couple of online participants.
Can I have a few? Oh, you go ahead. I'll wait for you.
I just have a couple of things. I think great presentation. Thank you very much.
Sorry, there we go. Great presentation. Thank you. With regard to capacity parking, your conclusion was that that we're not at capacity in the total because the school lot primarily was, it seemed that was green the whole time. But is there any issue with parking on a school parking lot that is run by I guess the elementary school is a town, is that right? It's run by the town. And is there any issue with having people park on a, school property, whether it's employees or visitors?
Thank you, Dee Dee. Jill Goldsmith, Town Manager. I think with that arrangement, it's just literally an arrangement to make with the school superintendent. They do lease the property from us, from the town. It's a long-term lease, but for summer, there's different arrangements that could be made, and hopefully at no cost. There's been arrangements at private lots. I'm not sure if you got to see those. One is the Catholic Church. Large parking area where some of the merchants' employees parked, mm-hmm. or the inn employees had parked too. So yeah, I think anything's possible. It's just a matter of having that discussion so it's formalized.
Yeah, because it seems the reason might be that nobody knows they can park there. This is at the elementary school.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty easy walk to downtown. And just to clarify, paid parking is just in the lots, right? Not along Main Street, or are you addressing Main Street as well? Just curious.
You mean in terms of the future potential?
Yeah, for putting.
I would just talk about the lots. I
That's
wouldn't
okay.
talk about the on the street itself.
That's what I thought. Thanks. And lastly, did you count Cross Street at all? The parking that goes on there between Main Street and I don't know how far.
We didn't formally count it, but there was consistently 3 to 4 vehicles right there on the corner all day long.
Okay, because that's not striped or anything, of course, but yeah, people park there. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Mike Waters wanted to speak, and then we'll go to the online participants and then back to the room.
Say that, thanks. This is a great job. We have had people look at a shuttle. We've done our own studies. We've had a few years, and you have addressed things that we haven't even thought of, and your group has addressed them very professionally. I would take most of what you have in mind, and I think it would all improve our situation, which I agree with prior remarks is intolerable in this present state. I just have a few things to add or to suggest. On electric charging stations, we voted to have them at the Eldridge lot, which is good for the tourists. The thought of having one or two in the school parking lot, I think adds the advantage that they're there all winter long. And we have teachers, we have the firemen, the emergency squad, all of our town employees would have the benefit of an available charging station right at their place of work. And I think we should really try and do that. I'm familiar with the area, Barcliff and Shore Road, where you proposed a crosswalk, and I support that from my experience in trying to cross in one piece. Every couple of cars come along and there's a polite person that will just let you get by, but you gotta wait for 10 people that don't care. Plus the cars coming from the north almost have a blind curve before they get to that spot. And the cars coming from the south are on the wrong side of the road because they've got to drive around the parked cars. For some reason, joggers in particular and others going to the fish pier take that route. So I think that's a great idea. There's something, the merchants have opposed paid parking on Main Street. Of course, I don't know if we'd ever be talking about meters with quarters. There are a lot of more modern ways. And our group agreed to that because it was very important to them. But as I listen to your trying to deal with employees, I recognize that if the merchants want customers to be able to park all day in front of their stores, you must get the employees out because they'll be there. They're there for 7 hours, and they'll take up all those spaces, especially if they're free. It's probably against good parking practice to make the most desirable spots free when you're trying to drive people to go to the less desirable ones. So time restrictions would be helpful if we're not going to have paid parking in driving people to the remote areas. Finally, when you add the cost of a shuttle, even a small one, you really ought to have paid parking, because otherwise, that's the best way to fund something like that. I think that Provincetown makes $2 or $3 million a year on paid parking. They make $2 million a year on short-term rental taxes. So there's a lot of money that Chatham isn't charging that other towns do, which is not inhospitable, but just a way of regulating the people that come to town. But once again, I think you've done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to take a few online questions or
Yeah, I
comments?
think that's fair.
Sure, so we'll start with Addie.
Hi, thank you. I don't mean to directly go off of what was just being said, but I do want to speak for merchants. I am the manager of one of the stores on the street. First off, based off what was just said too, it is policy for my staff to not park on the street. But if it gets to a point where they've been driving around in a circle for an hour, this is directly affecting our business, directly affecting their schedule. I often have people driving around for more than an hour trying to find parking, even with a long walk back to the store. So my concern with that is if the farther they go to park, at the end of the night, they have that much farther to walk in the dark alone. That is a huge concern for me. But it is policy at our store that you are not allowed to park on the street from May through September. So just so you know, that is at least on our minds. But coming from someone who's from Boston, I will say that putting restrictions on parking leads to parking intruding on residential areas, and that just leads to ticketing. But when there's no other way to go about it, excuse me, it's what ends up happening. And I know that this is not a town we want to see that in. But it also, like we've said, hinders our local business. And as someone who has been here for quite a few years, I agree this is a really high traffic year for us, but limiting parking, limiting time that you're allowed to spend in the town is going to limit people coming to the town and limit how much they're able to do here. So I really don't think that restrictions and time limits and paying for parking is going to bring more people. I think it's just going to deter. I mean, we have so many other competing towns where you don't have to pay for parking. It's already hard to hire for a full season, but to make a store inaccessible, it just makes it a lot harder. If people are looking for jobs in town, they will look everywhere. The other thing I do want to mention is being accessible to our locals is something really important to us. I open early at least 1 or 2 times a month for our locals. It's only advertised to our locals. We open about 2-3 hours early so that they can come when there's nobody taking up all the parking spots. And maybe this is something that we can, as the Merchants Association, can go on a bigger scale, is kind of market that as something we can all participate in. But we definitely want to make sure that our stores and our local merchants are staying accessible and still being heard. But it's definitely a challenge. We see it every day, but we appreciate you doing all the research. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next online, we have, I believe it's Stephen Daniel.
Hi, Katie. This may have been covered by David when he was addressing the fish pier. I had to take a call, so missed part of what he was going through, but just a thought I had with respect to the bottleneck that has been emerging on Shore Road over the last several years out there is perhaps consideration of building a bulkhead north to south on the west end of the upper parking lot, and then backfilling that. There's probably 6 to 8 feet of kind of backfillable space. Would not preclude any parking at the existing lot and could create a parking lane along that portion of Shore Road. Just to try again to ease that bottleneck. Just a thought.
Thank you. And next we have Jeff Dyke.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Just to pick up from Stephen, that stretch along Shore Road, where Shore Road, next to the fish pier, is bothersome. It's dangerous. I go by there, and there's not enough room for cars to go both ways. You got to really, really slow down. There are folks unloading children with carriages, and so if a bulkhead would free up another, 6 or 7 feet to have safe parking there, then I'd be in favor of it. But right now, it is just an extremely unsafe area. Lots to say on the fish pier. Captains and crew members should be parking down below as much as they can. If they can't, then crew members come up above, and they should be able to park there. If they're gone overnight, they should be able to park there. That's their livelihood. Those other spaces, we should probably have time limits on the other spaces and turn them over. Perhaps we already do. I like the idea of closing off the south way to make it just entry from the other way. It would create, I think, 3 or 4 other spaces. Great idea on having crosswalks there. It's a very, very busy area in the summertime. People going to the fish pier and to the seafood market there. It's a wonderful tourist attraction, and we did it to ourselves. We built that beautiful deck, and we want folks to go there, and we've improved it immeasurably with the walkway, et cetera. So let's make it as comfortable for them as we can. I won't proselytize too much, but I've been an advocate for a shuttle in this town for probably 10 years. And I love the notion of the Plymouth model, and I would like to, David, if you could, send along a contact in Plymouth to us, to the Parking Solutions Working Group, so that we might be able to reach out on their model. I like the size of it, like the fact it was electric, and I like the fact it was a partnership with the chamber. So I thought that was a really neat idea, and I'd like to be able to pursue that one. I've also been an advocate for paid parking in the parking lots themselves, not on Main Street. I think that the town of Chatham is foregoing literally millions of dollars in revenues that we can put towards our operating budget, our elementary schools, towards affordable housing. So I just think we're leaving a lot of money on the table and have for years. And I do look at Provincetown as an example. But David, also, if you have any insight on those paid parking lot vendors, if you will, that are popular or most popular, we have researched them. But, we need to kind of land on one or first get a ways to do it, a means to do it, but then land on one that we favor. I'd also like to get the comments from the public when you're closed on the 18th or even shortly thereafter. If public comments, I think the Parking Solutions Working Group would love to get those comments. And as far as EV charging, I think we need to enter the 21st century here, and I just am confused about, or not certain, I'm not an expert by any means, on how we size them and how the number of them is I should say, sized back to our town at potentially peak demand. I just don't know how many we need. I think having them placed judiciously in certain parking lots, popular parking lots, is not a bad idea. That's where folks are going to park. Placing them perhaps even in the elementary school parking lot might be a good idea. I do think that those lots are underutilized. We can, I think, control their use. If the elementary school isn't running programs, obviously that would come first, but parking certainly would be a close second there for the utilization of the parking lots. And I think the employees could use the elementary school parking lot, and we can shuttle them. We've mentioned that before. I think Chatham Barzin does that now, so I think that's a viable notion. And I want to get, as a public comment, MassDOT subsidized this study, so I want to thank MassDOT, who I think did a remarkably good job with the rotaries in West Chatham. But I thank them for the subsidy of this study. This is an excellent study, one of the best I've seen in my years of public service here in Chatham. And I think we'll get some real good results therefrom. Just with an eye towards the, I think it's now the fiscal year 26 budget and what we might have to do to bake into that. But anyway, thank you very much. I'm long-winded, but I really do appreciate all your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We'll get you those contacts, and we will post all public comments once the public comment period's closed on the project website. So we'll be sure to send those over too.
Thank you, David. Maybe we could go back to the room for a few
Sure.
comments and then go back online. So our next speaker.
Next victim step up. For the record, Corey Metters, Chatham Select Board, but my input is more from a merchant. I've had a shop on town for 25 years, Main Street. So there's a couple thoughts. One, pedestrian safety definitely should be driving a lot of this. Crosswalks, we lost a crosswalk over in front of Puritan by the library lane. And even for a while, that dark marking, people thought it was a crosswalk. They would utilize it. People cross wherever they desire in the summertime. It's a little bit sketchy sometime, and I respect that there's dimensional components about how far crosswalks can be to each other. But that's something I would maybe consider trying to reintroduce another crosswalk, if at all possible, just for that. Delivery vehicles, you have some control over them, you don't have some control over them. I have some of my vendors who are very amenable. They'll meet me early in the morning. There's some companies out there that they're going to go under their schedule. I think they're doing a pretty good job. I think it's been better over the last couple of years. I've seen less issues over the last several seasons. These guys don't want to be in town middle of the day, afternoon, on a cloudy day. They just don't. So you can control some of it. I had one of my vendors decided that July 4th was a great day to deliver ice cream. That was a lot of fun. Main Street parking, the marking components. I do recall the conversation, I believe it was Chief Paulina was part of that study, because I remember if we designated certain spots, we were actually going to lose a small bit of inventory, 4 or 6 spaces, I think, collectively over Main Street. So I would like to look back at that data just as a reference point. Time limits, I'm mixed about it. I do think it's somewhat detrimental. I'll be blunt about it. We're seeing a shift in downtown area. The days are busting at the seam. There's a lot of bodies coming through the town. But at night, it is quieting down. And I'm talking 6, 7, 8 o'clock. So we got to factor that in, that we have this parking problem seasonally, summertime, but now it's kind of shrinking a little bit because it's really focused during the daytime. My night staff comes in at 4 o'clock. There's quite a lot of times that they're looking behind the Orpheum Theater, ended up at Goose Pond. They're ending up at the elementary school, and they do end up at the elementary school. One of my staff last night was parked at the elementary school. So at 9:45, I don't like my staff walking by themselves so far away. So I drove them to the elementary school at 9:45 last night. Their car was the only car in the parking lot at the time. So it's used, but you just got to factor in some of the, nuances. Employees do park once in a while. I don't encourage my employees parking on Main Street. They try to either get a ride in, park at a friend's house sometime, elementary school. But you also got to remember, all these employees that are parking or working downtown are also our customers. They're buying lunches and buying clothing and stuff. So they are generating money to the downtown economy. So they're not just there to work and walk home or go home. They're, some of my staff, I think, on a daily basis do a routine, Chatham Cookware, Red Nun, Carmine's Pizza, et cetera, et cetera. So they're generating income to the community. But, if you do a time limit, that car's just got to get moved somewhere else. We only have so many spaces. So we have a parking crunch, and I think we can be creative about it, but we have to have some flexibility too. But it's a conversation I'm more than happy to, shed my 2 cents on. I served on the planning board for years. On the select board, I'll give you I'll work from my perspective there, but I also got to give you my 2 cents worth as a merchant for what I see on a daily basis, because things are changing and evolving. So as we take in this data, I encourage more people to kind of just give their 2 cents worth of what they see, because I see certain parts of town from my lens, someone down the street's going to see it a little bit better from their set of lenses. And I think collectively we can kind of probably work through this. So thank you.
Thank you, and that's very well said there at the end. Everybody's got a different perspective, and that's what I want to hear.
Hi, I'm Steve Buckley, and I've been a user of Main Street since I was about that tall, so I've been a small person, I've been on a bicycle, I've been motorcycle, any number, not a unicycle, sorry. But anyway, yeah, so I've had a number of perspectives over the years of transversing Main Street downtown. Anyway, one thing I wasn't quite clear, I didn't hear Mr. Metters was mentioning, I think, the study that was done previously by the chief of police, but I did mention to Dave that I'd heard of such a study, but had not been able to find out, and I was wondering, have you been able to find anything about that?
I have not been able to find anything, but
Okay,
Katie,
well,
we've
maybe-
discussed and heard again, so something
Okay,
I do
well,
want to find.
I would direct Mr. Metters to find anything, because that's been something that, like a bureaucratic or planning myth, because it's like this study that nobody can find. I'm in favor of assigned spaces, because you could go down there right now, and in any bay or any collection of parking spaces, you'll see at least, oh, look, that one parked 6 feet back, and that one parked 6 feet this way, and you basically, something that could have 5 spaces ends up being 3. So that's just one example of how you're losing the space. And so while part of me wants to say that, oh yeah, leave it up to people to be flexible, then we might as well not put any new parking stripes at the community center. Let them figure it out themselves. But then they'll be all over the place. So it's the same principle. I'm in favor of doing that. And that just for the price of a couple gallons of paint, you probably improve 10 or 20% the capacity for on-street parking downtown. And the other thing that I wanted to suggest, did you say that the comments that you'd be receiving would be included in the draft report?
Yep.
So,
All comments
okay.
received will be included in both draft and final, and we'll post them on the webpage.
Okay, so because before the next meeting, when you present the draft, will there be a document that we can see we can see the draft report before we show up at the meeting?
Draft report, I'm not 100% on that. You will have access to all the comments by then, though.
Okay. Because, I mean,
I'm not even sure yet when we are meeting with the Parking Solutions Group. We're going to try to finalize that, hopefully during this comment period, kind of when we can come back.
Okay, no, I understand that. And I should say to other people, I've met Mr. Nolan probably his first weekend on the job, which I don't know how many years ago that was. We were both younger then. And when I went to the Metropolitan Planning Organization meetings, which are monthly, so that's on a regional basis and so forth and so on. So I do know how to get a hold of them and so forth. But I have noticed that the Cape Cod Commission, usually in those meetings, they provide a packet before, just like with select board meetings. You get to see ahead of time what's going to be talked about, so you can have some sense of what questions to formulate before you show up. And so I'm saying, ordinarily you put out these things beforehand, so we can, even though they're it's a PowerPoint presentation, you can pretty much figure out what you're going to ask before you go to the meeting. So that's why I would suggest that any document that's presented next time be allowed to people can flip through it at least and make little notes and so forth and so on. So it would certainly help the public engagement aspect of it, that things haven't already been decided and so forth and so on. And the other thing that I was going to say was, I was up in Boston. I mean, whenever you go up to Boston, you look for this big P's. Like, where do I park? Where do I park? And so you see a big P, parking. You don't have to pull up and read the little sign or so forth. And so I applaud the idea of having something that tells people they know what that means. People from other places from the city, they know what a big P means, and it means go this way. And the other part is that with technology now, I was up a few weeks ago to a conference in Boston at Tufts University, and they had a parking garage there, and I went to the parking garage, and there was no valet. There was no arm that went up and down. You just went in, and then you punched in your little place there before you exit. You punch in your license plate number, and then you pay ahead of time for whatever it is you're going to do. But thing was, one day, I went on the second day, and it said, according to Google, it was closed. So I said, well, I'm not going to pay $25 for 2 hours. So, and it says it's closed, or it said on Google it was closed. So anyway, didn't do it. Got something couple of weeks later, or a week later, I got something in the mail said, hey, we read your license plate and you didn't pay on Saturday. So they saw me coming in, or the computer did, saw me coming in and saw me going out according to the thing. And there wasn't any, coin operated or this or that. So it just shows me that technology now is such that, yes, you let people know, hey, if you park here, you'll have to pay. And if, one way or another, you're going to get. So what I'm saying is that between that type of thing, the license plate readers, also if there was an app, and I would bet that there's an app out there someplace that basically you can ask Google or something. It's like, I'm going to Chatham. Where can I park? And it'll say, give you the directions. Turn left, turn right, turn here. Or it'll say, here's a parking lot that's only 50% full. And that people just want to know, where do I turn? So I just say, if there's something out there as far as the technology goes, that would be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a little shorter than everybody else. Hi, Kristen Muller. Notably here as resident and property owner, not member of the Merchants Association of Chamber of Commerce, which I am both, but I'm not speaking for them, I'm speaking for me. I own the property at the east end of Main Street across the street from the Eldridge lot, the commercial property. And as you did your initial slides with the percentages of how the lots were full, et cetera, it was screaming off the page to me that the Eldridge lot was the only one in what we consider downtown Chatham that was never at capacity. The school lots are great and there's lots of spaces in them, but people don't think about them when they think about coming to town. We need to find a way to use them, but it's not what people consider downtown. To have a parking lot that the town owns in the middle of town that never reached capacity when all of the others were over 100% was screaming at me. And it's screaming at me that it's because it's a paid lot. I own the property across the street. People come right to us when they don't want to pay there. And my tenants spend all day kicking people out that are parking with their beach chair to walk down the street to Lighthouse Beach and stop and park in our lot to try to do that. And then we have to be the parking lot police to say, sorry, you can't do that. This is a private lot. So the paid issue is an issue. Having said that, the reason I said I'm not speaking for the merchants or the chamber, I am an advocate for paid parking. I think that we should do it. I'm a tourist in a million other parts of our country, and I don't go anywhere where I don't have to pay to park my car for the day if I want to be there. And people want to be in Chatham. So you go to P-Town for the day, you pay. You go just about anywhere fun, you pay for the day. So I'm absolutely for it. And how that works out, I don't know. The logistics of it, I don't know. But you do it everywhere else. And I think the fear of it, because it's never been done here, is real, but I think that there's a way to overcome it. I grew up in New York, and I still go back home to see my mom all the time, and I go to different appointments in places, and towns there that aren't even tourist towns, I pay to park when I go to an appointment. I have 2 different apps on my phone. One is called Passport. One of you asked the name of, I think Jeff asked the name of some of the apps. One is called Passport. I forget what the other one is that a lot of New York City uses. And if you use one of those apps that people already have on their phones from other places they go, then you're not putting them out by having to do that. All it is a little sign up on a post somewhere on the block that you parked on. You type your zone number in, you tell them how long you want to park there, you hit Apple Pay or whatever you want to do on your phone, and you walk away. There's no kiosks, there's no nothing. People don't have to monitor a machine that's going to break down. It's not that hard, and people are used to doing it. The people that are coming here for vacation are coming here from places where they do this already. And so we think that they're going to care that they have to do it here, but they're not. They're used to doing it everywhere that they do it. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. If we could go to Joan and then Barry, and then we'll go back to the online participants.
Thank you. And as everyone else said, I want to thank you and your crew. You've done a phenomenal job. Very clear, precise. I appreciate it. I'm just going down a random list of items that not just I am interested in, but individuals who have spoken with me about it. And as the chair of the Traffic Safety Committee, we talk about parking spread. And by that, I mean not just downtown, but a lot of your side streets off of downtown, off of Cross Street, et cetera, are also feeling the pinch of people parking on very, very narrow streets that weren't meant for parking. They were only meant for cut-throughs. So that's a real concern of ours. At our forum, which we had, I believe, a year ago, individuals mentioned the community center and people not wanting to park there and then either take a shuttle or walk to town. They're doing that now. We see it all the time. I get concerned also about pedestrian safety when they are walking. So I'm really liking the idea of looking at that area around what I call the intersection that you talked about with Mass DOT. So they are using it now. I have to read my own writing. I have always been and will continue to be in favor of paid parking in the public lots. And those are the lots that are owned by the town, with the realization that a lot of people think some of the lots that abut public lots are also part of it, and they're not, they're private. But that said, an individual said, when we do complain about people parking and then walking to work and utilizing prime space, the question is, where are they going to park? And the safety issue, as mentioned by a previous speaker, when they get out of work later at night, is always a danger. So my sense is that there has to be some areas for parking for employees, and that's where I'm thinking, and it was mentioned about a private partnership with perhaps the businesses and those who own parking behind some of the businesses, where they could conceivably rent 1, 2, or 3 spaces for their employees to have some designated parking so that they know they don't have to go an hour at a time to try to find a space, which a lot of those people who are coming into our destination town, because it is a destination, are also doing the same thing. They're looking and looking and looking. I'm very much in favor of utilizing off-site parking, such as the community center and the elementary and even the middle school, because if we did do a shuttle service going up to the middle school and back downtown, and in my estimation, it has to be 2 shuttles going and coming, that it's very doable and fun. With regards to the passport, I also have that on my phone, but I just recently went to Charleston, South Carolina. They had even an easier one, and it was a QR code. They didn't even have to put it on a post. They put it on the ledge along the parking area, and all you had to do was QR code. They did have a kiosk, though, for those individuals who can't use or don't use that type of technology. With regards to Main Street parking, we as a group here have talked about if people want to park on Main Street itself and we're not going to charge, there should be a ruling for, and we were estimating, we haven't made any ruling on it, but 3-hour parking on Main Street free would give you the opportunity to park, shop, eat, leave, that type of thing. I am very aware of ADA issues, and I applaud you for bringing that issue up too. And I do know that Rob Faley, who is the liaison to the Traffic Safety Committee for the DPW, talks about also the consistency of signage and also about the awareness of painting more clear sites. So I want to bring that up. It has been brought to my attention too, and we talked a little bit about Shore Road and the issue of private homes where some have grass to the street and therefore people are parking on that grass, whereas others have either stone, flowers, or trees, and therefore they're not parking at those private residences. And so a lot of your Shore Road individuals are not happy with the fact that people are able to park all day in front of their homes. And again, it's the whole spread thing. When we did Bar Cliff, we took a lot of negative comment on closing that off for parking, but that was purely a safety and a traffic issue. And I think you'll find that traffic has lessened as far as safety goes. But if you don't park on Bar Cliff, you're going to park somewhere else. So this is the issue that we are constantly faced with, not only on this committee here, but on the Traffic Safety Committee and the Select Board. Main Street parking, I did say the 3 hours. The parking spread, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, full disclosure, I also am a merchant, part of the Merchants Association, Chamber of Commerce and Merchants Association. My business is also down by the Eldridge Garage. So a lot of things that have happened there have impacted me negatively. Last year it was the drainage. The road was shut off for seemed like a month, and then this year we had the parking lot just opened last week. It affects a lot of people negatively, but that's not what I want to talk about. As a merchant, I am in favor of paid parking, and as Mr. Nicastro said, I need fairness. And the fairness is, if you're going to do it, don't have 50-50. It's either, if you put free parking along the street, people are going to circle around, and we're going to have bigger traffic problems. I talk to people every day about, they drove around for an hour looking for a free parking spot because they wouldn't park in Eldridge Garage and pay $8 or whatever it was. And that just makes our problems worse. So if we're going to do it, let's do it. I like the idea of remote parking free because that will push people to it rather than ride around in circles. So I go to Provincetown frequently. I know it's paid. I don't care, and I think a lot of people who come to Chatham won't care that it's paid parking. So I'm in favor of it. On the street, paid parking. In the town lots, paid parking. On the outskirts, free. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 4 participants with their hands up for the past few minutes online, so if we could do those before we wrap up. So the first is Kim.
Hi, thank you. There's so many topics that have been discussed here tonight. I can't even touch on any of them, except that one of the questions I had, I don't believe was brought up, but I have to say I was touch and go throughout the hour and a half. Why are there still reserved parking that used to be during COVID? This was for takeout during COVID, and now the center of town has a section that people are very confused why it's reserved and it's in certain hours. And then that same merchant has now reserved spaces in the back of the Squire. All of a sudden that it's employee only, but the restaurant doesn't open until 5. Seems a little unfortunate, a little confusing. People don't necessarily understand how that goes. I think that consistency, if I can say a main theme, and whether that's paid parking, has to be consistent throughout. Whether it's businesses, has to be consistent throughout. And then residents have to understand that they don't have privilege over people who are coming temporarily. There are a number of residents who have, and I had an exchange with the police department about a certain resident who has a parking space that he just claims as his own. This doesn't exist if we want to have consistency. So I know there were a lot of different themes going on tonight. I'd love to see a lot more of the conversations that have taken place with the working group. I searched online and was not able to find that, but anything that could be distributed about ways to commit comments or, communication going forward, not to consume a meeting, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elaine Gibbs.
Yes, thank you. I agree with several of the previous speakers in terms of paid parking. It has to be everywhere. I mean, the idea that the spaces on Main Street are free is just begging people to park there and stay the whole day. That's not going to help retailers. They're going to leave their cars there. To give them the prime location free makes absolutely no sense. And I don't think saying a 2-hour parking is going to matter. They're going to stay there all day. That would require hiring 10 more bicycle police to go around and figure out when did they park? Were they there for 2 hours? What do I do? Mark their tires. They're not going to get ticketed. And so I think that if anything, that should be paid parking. And if you want to redirect people, again, it's about changing people's behavior. This is going to cost Chatham a lot of money, hearing all the potential things here, whether it's shuttles or whatever. And we have to be reimbursed for that. Because, again, full-time residents are paying the boat. And we can't even get in and park downtown. One of the things you could consider, since Eldridge Garage is becoming kind of an issue, is we own that property. We pay a vendor. They take a percentage of the cut. It's never full. Why would you not consider making that employee parking for the businesses? It's stable. They're there all day. There's not a lot of traffic in and out. It's more fair to the businesses down there and then everywhere else. And the further the parking is out, maybe make one of those free so that people say, okay. But I absolutely agree. If people are coming into Chatham, we are a destination. People know they're going to pay a premium. They're not going to balk at paying, I don't know, $5, $10 to park when they're going to be spending money. And we don't get, not to be ruthlessly objective here, but we do not, the town does not get revenue from retail. We get it from meals tax, but not retail. So if someone comes in and they leave their car there all day, it's actually hurting businesses, and we're not generating any revenue for it. So I think that, if you think outside of the box and say that that's premium parking on Main Street, and if we want to be able to turn that business over, those people are not shopping, they're at the beach, then you've got to have it as paid parking. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Angela?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you again to the Commission for the study. It is very eye-opening, and certainly we can appreciate, how congested it is downtown. For this meeting, what I did is I queried the staff. For those of you who know, we have the downtown visitor booth right across from the clothing bar, smack dab in the middle of town. So I just wanted to find out, certainly what they're seeing. It's hard for me to even get downtown to enact business as well, to be able to go and make sure the staff are doing well, but also there's no place to park. So inevitably, I try to just squeeze in and grab a town spot for 5 minutes so I can get up to the booth. But just some feedback from the staff that are there. We man that booth 8 hours a day. So the major issues really are safety issues. Corey alluded to the crossing and people not behaving or walking in the appropriate crossing areas. And drivers don't acknowledge it, and pedestrians just walk out without looking. Again, people are on, they're enjoying their family, they're enjoying our quintessential beautiful downtown, but that is definitely an awareness issue we need to bring forward. Drivers just aren't stopping. More signs and perhaps even just cones, if that's a potential, or something that is, I don't know what the answer is, but there needs to be some sort of just safety concerns around that. U-turns, people are making U-turns on Main Street. There's large vehicles delivering to the point earlier is that we can't control their schedule. They're going to deliver when their schedules are available. But more importantly, I do want to bring up, because we're closely partnered with the police department and the community service officers, and they are writing tickets, every minute of the day. The lines do need to be improved, but they're also getting verbally abused by folks that are parking their large vehicles, not in the lines, this, that, and the other. So just some feedback that we're all trying to work together to have everyone have a great time. I don't want to really take a position right now on paid or not paid. I do believe that there should be some sort of permitted parking for employees, an employee head count. Maybe there's a lottery or an allotment for a downtown location. And then thinking about, I love the shuttle idea, but even outgoing Foot Main, I'd encourage you to look to see what they do. They've got those fun trolleys. Edgartown has trolleys as well. So keeping with the aesthetic and the charm, encouraging people to ride the trolley for a nominal fee, and encouraging them to park outside of town may encourage more of an experience to come to town. And also having those shuttles running regularly for employees, and then also that trolley or some sort of other experience vehicle that people would want to be on just to see that downtown. So those are just some of the feedback that I have. I do think that it is a revenue opportunity. Would love to partner with and do some advertising on the side of the vehicles, whether it be banner advertising or those types of things. And I believe that some of our businesses would be thrilled to have their business on a vehicle that's going up and down and seen by many. The Eldridge lot, they do have those great little woodies that once you park your vehicle there, you can go to the fish pier, you can go to the beach. So there are some amenities that are beneficial to having that paid lot. Maybe we look at that formula and extend it a little bit farther. Regulation of timing on Main Street, I do agree. I have a senior staff, and we have an arrangement with Cape Cod 5, and we have a parking spot in their lot across the street. So I do have safe parking for the staff that are operating the booth downtown, especially when it's the height of season. We in the past have worked with the Catholic Church. Jill had alluded to that and spoke of using I worked with Father Sullivan, and we chose to not do that this year just because of different things. But it just requires a small insurance rider, and businesses can take benefit to that. Chatham Bars is using that lot this year at the Catholic Church. So we do have opportunities. I think we just need to collaborate with some of those other parking lots and find efficient and safe parking for our employees, and then look at what it could be potentially for our visitors and what type of revenue model. So that's just a few takeaways for me. I look forward to working with the group and coming up with some solutions.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. We have one more online participant, Ginny Ryan.
Hi, thanks for letting me talk. I'm a well, more than a seasonal resident, but not exactly a full-time resident. And I just wanted to add, first of all, thank you so much. I just think this is invaluable, and I really look forward to seeing what comes from this. I wanted to add two things. One is that in terms of the apps for parking and also the 2-hour, how do you monitor that? How many people do you have to hire? I really think those are issues that could be pretty easily solved just by looking at some of the other towns and cities that have already done that. I know where I live part of the time, we don't have police driving around all the time looking for who's stayed 2 hours. It's just it's automized. Then the other thing I just wanted to mention is about bicycles. I really hope that we wouldn't restrict bicycles in town. I know that it can be a problem, and I know there have to be rules of the road, but I have to say honestly, when the summer comes along, that's the way I get to town. Because that's how I do my shopping. That's how and I'm respectful, certainly. And I just want to say, as somebody who bikes a lot through town, I'm going about the same rate as cars during the summer. So I just want to put my 2 cents in, but also just to thank you so much for taking all of this so seriously. And I'm sure it's going to come out really well.
Thank you very much. I'd love to get to these next 2 comments still. Could we just flash the slideshow again real quick up here? I just want to remind folks that we are going to have a public comment period open through August 18th. And I just wanted to pause here on my email for a second because this is the best way to reach me to get comments in. And as mentioned, we'll put this recording on the project website as well as just the slides as well. If you're not looking for audio as well, you can just flip through the slides as well. But we are past 7. I would love to get to a couple more comments here. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll stay even longer if folks would like. I think at some point we're going to probably cut the online feed, and we have some poster boards in the back if folks want to provide comment by sticky note or just chatting with some staff. We can certainly do that as well for as long as folks would like tonight. But just wanted to get that in too. I needed a few words too.
I'll be real quick. I just wanted to follow up on what Elaine Gibbs was saying. I agreed with 99% of everything she said, including the fact that Main Street is the commodity, so that being free versus the rest is crazy. So if it's going to be paid, it should all be paid. But the idea of making the Eldridge lot an employee lot just further punishes everybody down at the East End that already doesn't get the foot traffic that the rest of town gets and all of that other stuff. So I understand the idea of wanting to concentrate employee parking somewhere, but sticking it out where the businesses at that end of town already don't get the level of foot traffic that everybody else doesn't seem fair. We barely get the little bit that walks from the Eldridge lot. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
John Horgan again with a couple of really quickies. One of the things is, I'm not sure if the width of Harwichport Main Street down there is much different from ours, but at least on their crosswalks, they have them very well marked compared to ours. I think they even have the pylons in the middle, basically. So it's obviously crosswalk, but it's something that I don't see here, and that might be something to look at as improved, markings for our crosswalks. The other thing in terms of the Eldridge Garage, one of the things that I had thought about and talked about once before was their pricing model. They're based upon $15, I believe, for the day. I said, well, why don't you have a smaller time interval and then charge proportionately more? So that somebody wanted to come and basically park for 3 hours, they could, and then if they ran over, okay, then, you maybe can even make more money by charging multiples of this lower fee, because that's what's discouraging some people is they want to maybe stay for a short time and they don't want to pay that full rate. Now, obviously, I'm being having a town sticker, I wouldn't pay, but it's something I don't know if that's been brought up as far as an option.
It's actually being done. They do have a split rate, $8 and $15.
Okay, but I didn't know if there was even a smaller, interval than that might encourage more people to use it for a shorter time.
We can certainly pass that along to the vendor.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. David, we have one more comment from Joan, and then I think we can.
Yes, I'm sorry. These were things I did not go over. When you mentioned volunteer park and the lighting, that has always been an issue. It's very, very dark, that lot. The other issue that we've brought up in the past is paving that lot, because there's a lot of wasted space in that lot because it's not paved. So that would be a priority in my estimation also. We've never taken a vote, but I believe there was consensus with this study group that if we do a lot to be paid for at Eldridge, that we also should have all the public lots paid, not just one, as mentioned, when you're down at the other end. That's not fair to those individuals trying to run a business. The other piece to this with regards to public parking and paying, I went for the Traffic Safety Committee prior to a meeting to observe at different areas of town, and it was a very rainy day, and I had to go by Oyster Pond parking lot. There was not one parking space to be had. And this hat here said, what a shame that this is packed full. People are coming even on a rainy day because, as I said earlier, it is a destination place. What a shame that we are losing that amount of money. We could be supporting off-site parking by having trolleys that would be paid for by the public parking. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I will let you kind of close this the appropriate way. But thank you all, everybody, so much for coming out tonight and your comments. As I mentioned, we have poster boards in the back. We're not kicking you out yet. If you want to have some more dialogue or kind of see some of these concepts and provide some more feedback, you're more than welcome to. We will put the slides and the PowerPoint onto the website, and public comments are opened until August 18th. Katie, it's yours.
I just wanted to, again, reiterate, thank you, everybody, from coming and participating online. The Parking Solutions Working Group members that were here certainly, will have heard everything that's been said, and also we'll hear from get the draft report from the Cape Cod Commission. I think it will be, sometime in the fall before we schedule their next meeting, but certainly we can post information about that on social media and certainly online when that agenda is posted. Thank you again, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you.